Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Densel, and I host Unfound, and I run this YouTube channel. I realize you don't want to give a thumbs up to the following video until you watch it. You know what? That's totally understandable. I can appreciate that. But what you can do right now is subscribe to this channel. The button is right there. Thanks. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Now. I am Unfound's host, Ed Densel. I hope everybody is having a great May of 2022. Today, I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of Marie Peter-Toltz. Her last name is hyphenated, Peter, P-E-T-E-R, hyphen Toltz, T-O-L-T-Z. This disappearance happened in Los Angeles, California. It occurred a month ago, April 28th, 2022. That is the accepted disappearance date. And Marie, at the time of her disappearance, was 41 years old. You will find, if you look her up, that she's in the artist community in LA. She was very prominent on Twitter. And that her name popped up over a year ago, having to do with another disappearance, if you can believe it. And I'm going to get into that in the map section of this episode. You know, by this time, if you are a longtime viewer of Unfound Now, usually in the middle I put a map to show you 1, 2, 3, 4 locations, whatever may be pertinent to that disappearance. Well, I'm going to do that certainly with Marie's, and then you will start to understand a little more about this other disappearance that is, you got to believe, is connected to hers, and what has happened recently in April of 2022 that then could have caused Marie's disappearance. Now, if you're new to Unfound Now, I started doing this series almost 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago. In fact, I think this episode is number 24. For 3 primary reasons. Number 1, publicity. Whether a disappearance is old or new and is still unsolved, that disappearance can benefit from being featured on a podcast like Unfound or on a YouTube channel like Unfound's YouTube channel. Always. Good publicity never hurts. Number 2, education. Everybody knows that I am all about educating people regarding disappearances. Those tendencies, those patterns, those themes that I see in disappearances now, having covered over 250 of them. I can't believe it. And I've even gone to some colleges and universities that will be happening again this fall, talking to criminal justice majors about disappearances. And number 3, instant analysis. I want to give you an idea of when I see a missing person story for the first time, a very new disappearance that appears wherever, how I look at it, how my assistants analyze it, if we end up talking about it, what are the things that go through our heads, and maybe some ways to read between the lines. I'm trying to find those words that are maybe not written, not spoken, to try to put it all together as to make your best guess at what happened in that disappearance. So once again, number 1, publicity. Number 2, education. And number 3, instant analysis. Something that I can't do on the regular episodes, at least the instant analysis part, because the disappearances we cover on the regular Unfound podcast have to be at least a year old before they get onto the podcast. Now, the points of learning for Marie's disappearance are the following 3. Number 1, no information, no problem. Number 2, the unknown statistic. And number 3, collateral damage. So now I'm going to be going to the map. You will hear me. You won't see me. Google Map will be in front of you. We have 4 prominent locations for Marie's disappearance. I'm also going to be reading 2 articles while you look at the map. One concerning this disappearance that occurred over a year ago, and then another article concerning that disappearance from just a month ago. But in both, Marie is connected to both of these articles. So I'm going to go to the map, and then you will see me again, and I will go much deeper into those points of learning. Okay, to fully understand maybe the disappearance of Marie, we first have to go back to April 6th of 2021. So over a year ago, for the disappearance of Valentin Brokesmith, Broeksmit. And the map you are looking at, actually, 3 of those locations are pertinent to Valentin's disappearance, and then the one right in the middle, this one, is relevant to Marie's, certainly. I'm not sure if it's relevant to Valentin's or not, but surely these 3 other locations are relevant to Valentin's, and this one right in the middle is relevant to Marie's. So I'm now going to read you an article, and you'll see why I say all of this is very, very unique circumstances. I said at the beginning of this video. I'm going to read an article from some LA, was it LA Times, LA Magazine, something like that. And this is pertinent to the disappearance of Valentin Brokesmith. The whereabouts of a 45-year-old man who was last seen after he dropped his girlfriend off on April 6th at Griffith Park, at the Griffith Park tennis facility, that's right up here, remain a mystery. Police are continuing to track down leads in the disappearance and are asking for tips that may lead to Valentin Brokesmith, who goes by Val, according to his girlfriend, listen very carefully, his girlfriend, Marie Peter-Toltz. So when Valentin went missing over a year ago, she was a source of information for his disappearance and seemingly was the last person, at least at the time, that they could track down who saw him. Peter-Toltz said Brokesmith did not exhibit unusual behavior, showed signs of wanting to harm himself, or give any indication that he was planning to flee in the hours leading up to his disappearance. She said Brokesmith dropped her off at the tennis court, once again right there, at 4 p.m., and was supposed to return a couple hours later. She waited and worried when Brokesmith didn't return as planned. Peter-Toltz said her phone died, and she had to borrow one from someone else at the tennis center to call her boyfriend, who never answered. I was very worried, Peter-Toltz said. He's a very reliable person, and it's unlike him. I waited so long at the tennis club, I don't know what happened to him. Peter-Toltz said she returned to the apartment they shared near downtown LA, which is this location right there, in the middle, and wondered where Brokesmith was all night. In the morning, a tracker on her boyfriend's cell phone alerted her it was located in a neighborhood near the Santa Monica Freeway, the 10, on the southern outskirts of downtown LA. She said she went to the location, a warehouse district near Central Avenue and 16th Street, and found the red 2020 Mini Cooper they shared abandoned with his phone inside. Peter-Toltz said she then called police. That is this location right here. So to go through this again, this is where they lived, right here in the middle location. He dropped her off at the tennis facility up here. The car was found a day later down here in this warehouse district, once again near the 10 freeway, called the Santa Monica Freeway for the locals. And this is 16th and Central. The intersection is right there. Now, this is the political part of this. I'm just going to read it. A point of interest in the case is Brokesmith's connection to a previous federal investigation involving alleged improprieties at Deutsche Bank, which was detailed in a 2019 New York Times article and best-selling book, Dark Towers, by David Einreich. Brokesmith's father, Deutsche Bank executive William Brokesmith, died by suicide in 2014, and the younger Brokesmith allegedly had access to documents and information about his father's activities at the bank, according to the New York Times article. The article contained details about Brokesmith meeting with FBI agents regarding their investigation into Deutsche Bank and described him as a whistleblower. The article also described Brokesmith's alleged habitual drug use, something I will talk about later, and eccentric behavior, including a penchant for trying to expose secrets and his musical skills in a band called Bikini Robot Army. Investigators concluded it was unlikely that investigation had anything to do with Brokesmith's disappearance on April 6th. Peter-Toltz said, once again now going back to Marie Peter-Toltz said the information in the article was true regarding the FBI investigation, but offered no specific details about what Brokesmith may have provided to government authorities or may still possess. She also denied Brokesmith was a substance abuser. Peter-Toltz surmised that Brokesmith's disappearance is somehow connected to a custody battle, so this is what Marie was thinking back at the time in April of 2021 when her boyfriend Val went missing. She gives her best reason at the time. Peter-Toltz surmised that Brokesmith's disappearance is somehow connected to a custody battle involving her son, but said she had no concrete evidence. She said she lost custody of her 9-year-old son to her ex-husband, and a relationship with Brokesmith was and remains a contentious part of the custody battle. She said Brokesmith spoke to a caseworker from the LA County Department of Children and Family Services on the day he disappeared, and she thinks he may have been upset over prospects of her regaining custody of her son. We had my son with us full-time until last year when I lost custody. Val tried to stop them. Since then, it's been an ongoing battle. It's not like Val to go missing. It's not like him to say he's going to pick me up and he doesn't. I just don't know what happened to him. So I think what we can surmise from those last couple of paragraphs, at the time, in April of 2021, Marie believed that there was foul play regarding Val's disappearance. I mean, what else could her saying that she believed it was connected to a custody battle involving her own son, what else could that mean? Meaning maybe Val went to confront her ex-husband and they got in a fight and the ex-husband did something. It seems to me that's where I would go with that statement. So once again, to go through these locations, they're at home. He drops her off. A day later, the car they share together is found down, abandoned in this area. We still haven't gotten to this location. I'll get to it in a moment. So to go through all of that. Now you should even know when that article was posted way back in April of 2021, there was a picture of Marie and Val together. And she was the source of that picture. So here we are over a year later. She is now missing. And so I will now read an April 25th, 2022 article regarding Marie's disappearance and also mentioning this other location and putting this all together, wrapping this part of the episode up, the map part. LAPD detectives continue to investigate what is being called the undetermined death of an FBI informant who had been subpoenaed as a witness by the House Intelligence Committee investigating Deutsche Bank and its ties to former President Donald Trump. Valentin Brokesmith, 45, was found dead in a courtyard of the Woodrow Wilson High School in El Sereno on the morning of April 25th, when school employees showed up for Monday morning classes at 7 a.m. Pacific time. There was no sign of trauma and no foul play suspected at this time, LAPD officials said. So this location, the reason this high school is on this map is that was where Val was found. And it seems that he had just been there. It's not like somebody was going somewhere in the trees on the campus somewhere and happened upon him and he seemed to have been there for weeks or months. It seems he was right there for everyone to see. And it had just happened that weekend going back to a month ago, April 25th of 2022. Now you can see, I can wrap this up, but I'm going to keep reading. This is where they lived. This was the tennis center where Val dropped Marie off. This is where their car was found. This is where he was eventually found a year later, but it seems that the body just ended up there that weekend. So I suppose you could believe that during this whole time, Val was alive right in this area where Marie had been living the whole time. Remember, in the previous articles, she thought that there was foul play. It seems that he actually was alive for a year and had been in this area the whole time. Very strange. Okay, so let me continue reading. What remains unclear is how Brokesmith, who called himself a comically terrible spy on his Twitter profile, got into the locked facility before his death. sources told LA Magazine. He has no connection to that area, that school, and no one knows how he got in. We have a guy found dead in a secure high school on a Monday morning who was working with the feds and whose father suicided himself, said one investigator with direct knowledge of the case. The circumstances alone merit a second look. The Los LA County Medical Examiner coroner's report on Brokesmith's body did not determine a cause or manner of death, writing that the case is pending and awaiting additional information. The LAPD believes that Brokesmith was alone on the grounds of the school most of the weekend preceding his death. The case has been assigned to a homicide unit detective. Remember now, he's found on April 25th. Marie goes missing on April 28th. That's the accepted disappearance date for her. 3 days after Valentin's body appeared on the high school campus, and I once again want to remind you that this is where she lived. His body's found there. She's there. I measured it out. It's 2.6 miles. So that is the map section. Some of the more unusual facts and locations being related to each other that I've covered in a disappearance or disappearances. But I just wanted to show all of you that. To go over it one more time. This is where they were living before Val went missing. He drops her off that day, April 6th. The car ends up down here the next day. Over a year later, his body's found on the campus of Woodrow Wilson High School. As you said, it was a secure facility. Somehow he found his way inside, and the whole time, Marie was living right there. Could it be that he was a homeless person in this area the whole time, and she was driving by him and didn't even know? It's something you'll probably want to think about. Okay, I'll go back to being on camera, and I will talk about those learning points for Marie's disappearance. Okay, I'm back. Before I get into those 3 points of learning, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel if you're just finding this channel for the first time. I think that's always probable when this Unfound Now series gets produced. You can find the subscription button right there. Of course, there was a video posted at the beginning, this little trailer to this episode reminding you to do that. If you like what we're doing here at Unfound, please give us the thumbs up for this video, and maybe even consider becoming a very special member of this channel. That button is also down there, the join button, and you get some special things for the low price of 10 cents a day. That's it. Hope you will also consider becoming a subscriber to the podcast on Spotify or iTunes, whatever podcast platform you use. Find us on Facebook, the discussion group, the page, Instagram. We're now on TikTok, Twitter. Find us in all of those locations. All right, let's get to those 3 learning points for this disappearance of Marie Peter-Toltz. Number 1, no information, no problem. As you can tell, and I did my best, not a lot of information out there about Marie's disappearance. I tried contacting a couple of her friends that I found. There's a GoFundMe page with an email address there. I contacted it, emailed them. Nobody got back to me. Found a friend of hers on Facebook, made a post. That person did not get back to me. People have other things going on in their lives. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not saying it's suspicious or anything, but I did make an attempt to try to get more facts about who last saw Marie, where was she, is her car also missing, any phone information. There's just nothing out there. I also went to Web Sleuths, nothing there. But I want you to know that is never going to keep Unfound from covering disappearances. We always can find something to talk about, and certainly we're finding something to talk about regarding Marie's disappearance. I take great pride. I think that Unfound is very unique, and Unfound Now is very unique in that regard, that I don't need to have a ton of information to talk about a disappearance. Maybe it's because of 250 cases that are a good experience, but also I don't like I don't like cases to have that kind of prerequisite. Well, if there's not information, I'm not going to cover it. Sounds very arrogant. Anybody has that attitude, I start thinking, well, then why are you covering disappearances? Our goal is to make them known no matter what happened, how much information, what exactly is going on there. And I take great pride, and I just have a list. And if you see me looking off to my left, I can name some disappearances that before we covered them on the regular Unfound podcast, there was nothing out there about them. I could name Dal Phillips from Tennessee, Peggy and Patty McDaniel, sisters who went missing together back in 1979. Back when I covered their disappearance in the spring of 2017, there was only a picture of one of them online. Now, if you do a search for them, there's all sorts of information. I'd like to think that Unfound had something to do with that. And the disappearance of Randy Duran, this is another disappearance going back a long ways, that we did an entire episode on his disappearance based on one thing, one postcard. So this is how we do things at Unfound. And so regarding Marie's, at least publicly, there's not a lot of information to point us in any directions regarding her disappearance, but that's never going to sway me from giving it my best shot. But when you come across a disappearance like that, sometime maybe it's one in your local area, I'm just going to read off some questions that should come to your mind. And as I think you already know, you see me looking off to my left or right. I don't do these Unfound episodes off the top of my head. I do have some notes, so just allow me to read from my notes for a moment. These are some important questions when you come across a disappearance that doesn't have a lot of information connected to it. Who is the last person who can be trusted who saw the person? And where was that and when? Probably the most important part of that is that can be trusted. Who is that person that can be trusted? Really, really trusted. A person who has no motivation to cause that person to disappear if there's a reason to believe there was foul play. Another important question, at the person's place, what is there? What is not there? If we're talking about very recent disappearances, then of course we talk about phones, something that we wouldn't probably talk about going back to the 90s, 80s, or 70s. But cell phones, wallets, purses, car keys, clothes, medication, are those things in the person's residence or not? You would probably not be surprised if you run across a disappearance or a person's wallet, keys, phone, all those things are left behind. That's usually a very bad sign. Unfortunately for Marie's, that information is not public. What were that person's plans? Did that person have any plans for that day or the upcoming days that he or she had to meet? Were they missed? Would anybody have wanted this person to disappear? I think a majority of the disappearances that we cover, foul play is a factor. So we always have to consider that. If this person is missing, is there anybody in that person's life who wanted that person to go missing? And what was that missing person's demeanor the last time that trusted person saw him or her? Very important questions that should be going through your mind when you come across a disappearance that doesn't have a lot of information, that is lacking all of that information. Those are the questions that should be primary in your thoughts. All right, let's go to learning point number 2, the unknown statistic. The unknown statistic in missing persons is how many of these people go missing but are still alive and who are homeless. There is really no way to keep track of this. We know it happens. We know that people who help homeless people often run into people who are on some missing persons report somewhere, but these people don't want to go back to their families. They're kind of missing, but they're not missing. The family thinks they're missing, but that person, there's no harm has come to that person. The person has chosen to walk out of his or her life and live on the streets. This is a huge unknown statistic, and even myself having covered 250 disappearances, I can't even begin to give you a percentage. I can't. I don't think it's very high, but it would be nice if we knew that statistic, but I don't think anybody's really done that study, any studies on that. Of course, it's relevant for both Valentin's and Marie's, because it seems that in Valentin's case, he was homeless for a year and not one person suspected it. And in fact, it seems that he was homeless right in the area where he was living with Marie. And because we know Valentin was missing for a year and seemingly was homeless, we also then must consider the idea that maybe Marie decided to do that as well. No proof of that, but it's something that an idea we must think about. And women, yes, they can go homeless, choose to be homeless too, even though we think of a large majority of the population, the homeless population, being men. But as you can imagine, way more dangerous for women to become homeless than men. So some unfound disappearances that could be situations where those people went homeless. Certainly Claudia Wells, her daughter, certainly believes that her mother is homeless. We don't know if her mother's still alive now, but her daughter seemingly found out a few years after her mother went missing that it was a good chance that her mother ended up in LA coincidentally and was a homeless person. Trevor Nichols, he went AWOL from the military. I suppose there could be some ideas that he is now homeless, walked out of his life for whatever reason. We do know of how many military vets, military members suffer from PTSD, and that could cause them to be homeless, to walk out of their lives. Sebastian Kelly, very recent disappearance, might consider that for his as well. Rashawn Francis from Scranton, Pennsylvania, disappearance we covered last summer. And then Cameron Remmer, very prominent disappearance in Unfound's catalog. It ended up being like a 4-hour episode. I worked on that one for a year back in 2019. And there was even a picture of a guy who seemingly, some people says it looks like Cameron. I do not, but a picture that was taken over 2 years ago in San Francisco. But it's seemingly since then, this man who maybe looks like Cameron has not been tracked down for whatever reason. I was doubtful at the time whether it was Cameron. I'm even more doubtful now. But maybe. So we have covered some disappearances that could have led to homelessness, living on the streets. I just don't think there are very many. And anytime you're thinking about this, you need to be thinking about, did this person have some drug issues, some mental issues? It does seem that Valentin, at least, had some drug issues before he went missing. I don't know anything about whether Marie was into drugs or not. Unfortunately, I would say, being that the two were a couple, when one of them has a drug problem, the other one usually does too. But I don't have any factual information to show that Marie had any addictions of any kind. So moving on to learning point number 3, and that is collateral damage. You have to think about Marie's disappearance in that frame of mind. I don't think it's a coincidence that her boyfriend goes missing for a year and then is found deceased on that high school's campus, and then she goes missing right around the same time. Certainly maybe some people are going to go to Kookville or conspiracy land regarding all of this, that there could be foul play involved, connected to this. I'm not inclined to believe that, but I think more likely it shows the effect that disappearances can have on people, especially maybe on Marie, who, in this relationship with Valentin, he goes missing, and then when he is discovered deceased, he's not far away from where she was living, and in fact, he might have been in that area around her that entire time. That could really have an effect on people. And something that I don't get into hardly at all, I think maybe some of the guests have talked about it on their own, maybe like at the end of their interviews, but we don't get into it too deeply, like a really back and forth conversation in the regular podcast episodes about collateral damage. How so many disappearances have led to, for example, when a child goes missing, the parents then end up getting divorced. That happens often. We have one parent who goes missing, and then the other parent starts having drug issues or mental health issues. Very common. Siblings talking about the effects they've suffered when they have a brother or sister, how it's affected their lives very detrimentally. This is why, of all of the reasons, we of course want to find these people. Whether they're alive, deceased, we want to find them. But they are not the only victims in these disappearances. The families and friends are victims too, how these disappearances affect these other people's lives in horrible ways that maybe nobody sees. But there's a lot of collateral damage for these disappearances that last for the rest of these people's lives. We have to understand that, and these family and friends, they should be treated as such. All right, we should never think, oh, a person went missing, it seems like people are moving on pretty well. That is rarely the case. So I think about Marie finding out that Valentin is now deceased and he wasn't too far away from where she was living. I can't help but think that affected her horribly, in some way. Now, you should know, though, when it comes to collateral damage, we could think of it maybe in another way, too, being that we have two disappearances, Valentin's and Marie's, that certainly are connected. We actually covered the disappearances of Aaron Barnard and Jeremy Burt, each of which I think are connected to each other. Aaron went missing first, then a few years later, Jeremy went missing. Well, there is decent information to show that they either knew each other casually or they had girlfriends who knew each other. Aaron went missing under surely what are foul play circumstances, and Jeremy did as well. And so when it comes to collateral damage, was Jeremy the collateral damage of Aaron going missing? Yes, it was a few years later, but still. So we might think about it, the words collateral damage in that way too. So some disappearances can be connected to each other. And so it just one thing maybe leads to another. In fact, Aaron's and Jeremy's, their episodes were back-to-back. I called them Cause and Effect Part 1, Cause and Effect Part 2. And I think that maybe we could be thinking about Valentin's and Marie's in the same way as well, one leading to the other, another form of collateral damage. So my insight regarding Valentin's and Marie's disappearances, Valentin obviously going through a lot. We don't do politics here. A lot of pressure on him. It seems like he already had some addiction going on anyway. Could have just culminated in that day. Very easy to understand. Happens a lot, more than the public would ever understand. He drops Marie off to go to play tennis, and he just goes off the deep end. That is common. Once more, I'm going to say it again. Way more than the public realizes. Now, can I explain him being found where he was found on that school property and what he was doing for the past year? And was he really around that entire area the whole time? I'm just as mystified as everybody else. But regarding the disappearance itself, that day when it happened, it's more common than people think. Usually, though, these people are found deceased much quicker. For him, it seemed like he was living for quite a while, for a year, and then something happened. He ended up on that campus. I'm wondering if he had been using that high school as like a home. He had found a way to secretly live there on the weekends or when school wasn't in session, and then would get out of there when he knew that the students, administration, teachers, everybody would be coming back. That's what comes to my mind. He had a secret way to get in there, and then this particular time he overdosed while he was on the property. That's what comes to mind regarding his disappearance. As for Marie's, I'd have to know a lot more about the phone pings, text calls, statements that she was making. But it appears to me that she had a very adverse reaction to Valentin being found deceased. I, of course, hope that she is alive. I guess there's a chance maybe she's just gone off the grid. Maybe she's getting herself some help and she hasn't told anybody. Maybe we can hold out for some hope on that. But like I said, I tried reaching out to her friends to get more information. I was not successful. I'm not blaming them. Probably maybe just hearing about me for the first time. Don't know if I can help or not. But surely if I get any more information regarding Marie's disappearance, I will publicize it probably on Facebook or during the live show, someplace like that. But at this point, it does seem that she went missing all on her own, and probably an adverse effect to Valentin being found deceased. Very sad. I, of course, hope that she's alive out there somewhere. But that's it. That's the end to this episode of Unfound Now for May of 2022, talking about the disappearance of Marie Peter-Toltz. Thanks for watching.